Gran Turismo Sport will soon be releasing its main selling point, almost a year after the game came out, being the official FIA Championships, which will supposedly get real people to drive real race cars in real life, which means really some people probably moved on from Gran Turismo 6 and aren't looking back. But some people, me included, have probably never stopped looking back at GT6 and thinking that it's overall a better game. It's not the dandiest game in the world, but in a lot of ways, it is statistically better than Gran Turismo Sport. More cars, more tracks, and it also had the ability to make your own tracks. GT Sport has the ability to make your own liveries. GT6 had the ability to make your own tracks. What's more important in a racing simulator, tracks or liveries? Well, that can be y'all's own opinion. But I don't really think there's any argument about that tracks are a pretty important part. Whether it's more important than liveries, maybe that's a different video. But this video is to discuss Gran Turismo 6's Track Path Editor. Meaning, you could pretty much make any track you wanted to within certain parameters, or if you're smart enough, you could figure out ways to get out of those parameters and literally make anything you wanted. Do y'all remember Complex String from the early Gran Turismo games? Well, somebody made it in GT6, and then somebody made a 21-mile version of it with about 30,000-ish feet of elevation change. 30,000 feet of elevation change. Y'all thought Complex String was hard in the original Gran Turismos? Well, it's darned near impossible in GT6. And it's honestly really cotton-picking fun, and this is honestly one of thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands, of tracks that the community has made. And we all know that Gran Turismo Sport is an online-only game. So in theory, after its online servers go, you're going to pretty much lose everything. We don't know that for a fact yet. In theory, they may release a patch in which you can keep your stuff and be able to save your progress. But in GT6, we do know this. There is an offline portion of that game in which you can do it and save your progress. But the Track Path Editor is not part of that offline portion. The Track Path Editor featured tracks that you could make on your own, and then you could keep as your own track. You can't use those now, and you can't use the ones you downloaded from the community. Obviously, you can't make new ones, and even more obviously, you can't download new ones. But I will say this, Gran Turismo 5 allowed you to keep any track you previously downloaded before its servers went down. Gran Turismo 5 also had a track path editor. It wasn't specifically called that. But you could make your own tracks, or you could download other people's tracks. And both of those still work to this day, whether it's a track you downloaded from someone else, or a track you made yourself. Gran Turismo 6, you can't use any of those tracks anymore. And honestly, that's pretty caught-picking sad. If you consider how many hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of hours put in to those tracks that people made for free without getting any type of pay, and some of which were actually featured in the Gran Turismo 6, the full game. Meaning Gran Turismo 6 used some tracks made by people in their seasonal events. I don't know if they got some type of payment for it, or if those tracks were just made by PD's own employees, but nonetheless, there were a few of those used in seasonal events. And there were a lot of those featured on many websites. GT Planet had track features, and that's just one of many. I know GT Planet for a fact because, well, I've had people who I've raced with post tracks on there, like Era You've Had 97, and I've raced on some of the tracks that were downloaded from GT Planet. This is not one of those, but there's a whole heck of a heap of those out there too if you want to look on GT Planet and relive some of those memories, or make some of the new ones for your own by looking at the tracks. You can no longer race on the tracks, though. Any of them. Even if they were posted on a website and even have a link to the download, you still can't do it. nor can you play what you've already downloaded. The reason I started this video out saying how Gran Turismo Sport is about to get its main feature and its main selling point, but they probably sponsored more than anything, to burn it to the ground and start from new so people could become real race car drivers in a real driving simulator. That took almost a year to actually come to fruition. The Gran Turismo 6's track path editor, it came out, I think it was 2 or more years after the game did. And it, in some ways, was actually somewhat of a disappointment. At one point, it was kind of looking like we were going to get to map real roads in real life. Meaning you could go down Route 66, you load what you went down on that road to the track path editor, and then you could download it in the main game. Or really anything. I guess you could take a ride along on a real racetrack, and then you could use that. Oh, we got this. But at least we got something. GT Sport still doesn't have a track path editor at all. There's been no announcement of the original rumors of having the real world tracks be implemented into any game ever, and there hasn't even been an announcement of something like this happening in GT Sport either. Plus, we don't even have it at all now for the game that initially had it, GT6. That's kind of sad, isn't it? There's been no announcement of a track path editor ever happening again, and we don't even have one of the 2 we've ever had. What's even more sad is the original game that had it still has it. The original one, which in theory means the one that's been around longer, so less point of it still being there. And in theory, the quote-unquote obsolete one. To be honest, they were too much different for me to truly compare them. GT6, where you could have stuff like this. The GT5, you could sort of make your own tracks, not necessarily sculpt them out by line by line, but you could do different iterations of certain settings and stuff, and you could get your own thing that you may not even have ever thought about. Which is better, I don't know, but by default, now, Gran Turismo 5 track path editor, or whatever it was called back then, is still the better one, because that's what we still have now. If Gran Turismo 6 can't keep its stuff that really doesn't have all that much to do with offline going, especially when they could do it in a game previous, that doesn't really spell too good of things for the future, does it? We don't even have the feature to begin with in Sport, and we couldn't even keep it in the most recent game. This is a speculation, but I really don't see it ever coming back. Whether it's just a track path editor like this, or having a chance to download real world roads or tracks in the game, or even just a Gran Turismo 5 spec livery editor where you couldn't even draw your own, you could just put in different settings and get different tracks from that. We may get none of that back, but well, at least we still have Gran Turismo 5s, I guess. And we have the memories from Gran Turismo 6. Kind of. If y'all want me to sell some of those memories with a replay or special taping of races or whatever, I can, but honestly, I've already sold the majority of that content that I have, because I figured we were going to be able to keep the game, or keep the tracks in the game, given that we could in GT5. But no. That's kind of sad, isn't it? PD can't even get something right they got right 4 years ago, and there's no signs of them even attempting to do it again. Will we be able to keep stuff in GT Sport? Well, if we can't even keep something that we were able to keep before in GT6, I don't know, folks. I don't know. For now, this is just PD logic for Gran Turismo 6. But who knows about the future, folks? Because this has no future. It's all on the past. And we may never get something like this in the future at all. And that ain't worth a yeehaw, is it? But at least we have the memories, and actually Gran Turismo 5. Y'all want me to make new tracks in Gran Turismo 5? Because guess what? That's a thing that we can still do with no online. We make our own tracks that only ourselves use. In theory, you could still do that in 6, but you can't. If y'all want me to do that in GT5, leave it in the comments below. And you know what? If you even want track specifics and you know that game's editor and you like know the parameters with it, explain what you want, and I'll do my best to make it. Because guess what? It still can. Maybe that'll be worth a yeehaw. I don't know. But as of now, this ain't. That's for sure, folks. That's for sure.